the Hayfork Chamber of Commerce. The Hayfork Chamber, as all of you probably know, is dedicated to the businesses of Hayfork, business and community. So our mission is to support our members, the people they serve, and the town they call home in order to develop and advance a thriving business community. One of the things that we think has to be done in order to actually achieve those goals is to make our voices heard. And one of the best ways to make our voices heard is to get people to vote. And so we had a goal this election to get to increase voter output by 25% in Hayfork over 26 and 2018. That's actually not large number of people. It's about 250 registered voters that would turn out versus the 2 and 4 years before. But it's still 25%. So we have a campaign. We have, like, I don't know if you guys have seen it or not. We have a little logo. You guys can see a little Hayfork votes. We have signs. We have flyers. We have a giant sign that sometimes feels like it's going to get blown over with all this wind over State Highway 3. And we're also doing events like this. So we're thinking of canceling it, but we decided to move forward, even though it's only going to be online, despite COVID. One thing I would love, and I'll bring this up at the end as well, is I'm sure anyone participating or listening in or watching the videos afterwards is registered and is going to vote. I doubt that you would sit through 2 hours of candidates night and not be a voter. So I'm not going to nag all of you to register and to vote, but I would say it would be great if everybody could commit to getting 2 people that you know who are not registered, who might be on the fence about voting, who might not understand why it's so important, just 2 people per person to vote. And when you start multiplying that by the numbers that are here or friends of friends, it'll help with turnout overall. Like, it doesn't have to be in Hayfork, obviously. Okay, so in terms of who's with us tonight, some of you may already know Dan Frazier. We were originally going to include District 5, the Board of Supervisors race, with Dan Frazier and Jeff Dickey, and Dan really did try. We were on the phone almost every other day with Maya asking him how he's doing with the fires. And of Saturday, we just decided he's still fighting them too much. So he's down there. His home is okay, but he's pitched in to help his neighbors. And so he decided he couldn't make it. And then Jeff, give him credit. We also talked and we decided it would be unfair to have him speak and not his opposing candidate, because his opposing candidate is fighting fires. So the good news from that is we have all these lovely TPUD candidates. So thank you so much for last minute. And literally, you all know it was last minute. I think I emailed you like yesterday morning or something ridiculous like that, for jumping into this. Totally appreciate it, especially after just coming off the Grange. So we have Adrian, who's going to speak about Measure G, the Trinity County commercial cannabis tax. We have Richard and Tim, who probably aren't busy at all right now with all the fires. That was sarcastic. We're going to speak about Measure K, the half-cent sales tax. We have Kathy Ratliff, who gets to speak about 2 measures because they're all interconnected. The Trinity Life Support Community Services District, formation and tax, so it's a mouthful. And then for the Trinity Public Utilities District, hope I got that right. We have Alex Cousins, Kelly Gant, Andrew Johnson, Kyle McDonald, Tim Saxon, Thomas Waltz, and Anna Wright. I feel like I just introduced the Ball Bill show.
Actually, Tim Saxon is not running for the board. You said Tim Saxon. You said Tim Saxon's running for the board. I'm not running for the board.
Did I have you in the wrong place? Oh, I have you twice. Well, maybe you didn't know, but you're now running for the board.
Well, maybe after my second term for sheriff, maybe I will run for the board. I don't know.
Okay. Well, you have your work cut out for you because you've got strong candidates. Did I miss anyone then? No, that was just a copy and paste error. My apologies, Tim. So just in terms of logistics, I mentioned this is being recorded. We're going to do something similar to what the Grange did. I thought that worked well. We'll just have someone speak about a measure, 3-minute introduction. Everybody gets 3 minutes for an introduction, and then we'll have however long it takes for questions and answers. And then we'll move on to the TPUD candidates. You will get 3 minutes each, and then we'll go into questions and answers. Does that make sense? Yeah?
Yep.
Do you want to just, on a chat?
This quick question,
Yeah.
Is it all right if we mute, and then if we do get a question for ourselves, that Anna will unmute us? Is that how it's going to work?
Anna, do you want to just explain chat and how it pertains to participant, like guests and the participants?
Yes, and on a side note, I do believe I've fixed the mute issue, so you all should now be able to mute and unmute yourselves. So that includes our guests outside of our candidates. So anyone who's calling in as a chamber or here to listen, you can mute and unmute yourself. So thanks for working with me and being patient. So my name is Anna Carson. I work with Trinity Together. We help facilitate meetings, bring people together, do information, education, outreach in the community. That's my role here tonight. I will be serving as sort of the chat support. So all questions for all candidates, all measures will need to come through the chat box only. So you can type into the chat box. Hopefully, I think everyone at this point is familiar with chat. There's a little icon at the bottom of your screen, looks like a bubble. You type it into there, it will come just to me, and I am going to funnel those questions to Julia, and Julia will let you know if that question is for you specifically, as Tom Walls, for example, as a candidate, or for the entire PUD elect. Okay, any questions about that? And same also if it is a question for Measure G, Measure H, Measure I, and whatnot. So as you submit questions, if you could be really specific to me as to who that question is directed at, it will help ensure that we're asking the right question to the right person. Thanks.
Cool. And we also had some questions that were emailed to us, which I'll try and get to as well if they're not covered in chat. Great. Okay, so enough intros. So first up, we're going to go in alphabetical order with the measures. We have Measure G. Adrian, it's the Trinity County Commercial Cannabis Tax. And Adrian Keys, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Julia, and everybody else. I appreciate the opportunity to speak about Measure G. Measure G is your on the internet? Background noise is pretty strong. Thank you. Measure G is a tax on commercial cannabis cultivation and retail for Trinity County. All the funds will go to the general fund. It is a flat rate, production-based and tiered structure that is largely modeled after the wine and the craft beer industry. And specifically in the craft beer industry, they use a tiered production system so that like microbrews, similar like Lagunitas and Mad River and all these companies, when they start up and they're small, they're taxed at a considerably lower rate than the Coors and Budweiser and so on of the world. And it allows them to get a toehold in the marketplace, and then they can make their own decisions about if they want to scale and grow or not. And if they choose to scale and grow, then they'll begin to pay in that higher tax bracket. And so that's essentially what we did for this. And part of it was after years of consideration and just dozens of conversations with supervisors, with industry, cannabis industry, wine industry, with lawyers, with other participants in the cannabis industry who are operating underneath a variety of structures elsewhere. We really felt that this one, it serves our community and the intent of our ordinance better, in my opinion, than the other structures. This, by tiering for the smaller farms, it supports our smaller, like original or more, I don't know, local, possibly farms. And then as you go up the scale, as you begin to grow, or if you choose to expand your cultivation area, your tax increases up to a total of $15.44 a square foot. I don't know if I would have time in the 3 minutes to get into all of the structures, although it is available online, I'm sure, through the elections and whatnot.
I think you've only done like 45 seconds. So
well, it feels like forever.
It just seems like 3 minutes.
Well, thank you. Well, I'll give it a shot then. The lowest tier is farms that produce, or the production of 0 to 100 pounds, and that is paid out at 25% of the full rate, which is, so that is $3.86 a pound. And then anything between 100 pounds and 400 pounds is taxed at 50% of the full rate. That's $7.72. From 400 to 1,000, so you're starting to get into what in Trinity County is considered a larger farm, but on a statewide scale, essentially all of our farms are small. But nonetheless, on our local level, that is at 75%, and that's $11.58. And then everything over 1,000 pounds is taxed at the full rate of $15.44. And it's accounted for through the metric system, through metric track and trace. It's quite an elaborate program. It's used in a total of 14 states to regulate cannabis and transactions. And it's the mechanism by which the state assesses cultivation tax. So that it's the most bulletproof system that the state could come up with. It tracks the cannabis from seed to sale, quite literally. As we're going into harvest, we're all struggling to learn this system. It's quite time consuming. But by producing a metric,
you're headed up to 3 minutes now.
I am? Okay, well, thank you. That went by really fast. I really wish I had more time. And in fact, I really do wish we were in person. I think it would be a lot more communicated, but I appreciate your time and I won't go over my 3 minutes. So
well, let's see if the questions will give you the chance to fit in more. Let's see what a good politician you are and how much more you can cram into your answers. How about that? Sure. So anyone who's showing up, I'm just going to repeat this a couple of times for people who are showing up a little bit late, which is no problem, but we're going to be getting questions. You can chat your questions to Anna. I'm not sure, Anna, what your name is here. Oh, it's just Anna. Okay, so there is a question. You're going to see how bad my eyes are because I have to squint. Adrian, is the per pound tax in aggregate for a grower, example, 501 pounds per in a year, or is the first 100 pounds charged differently than the next 100 pounds?
That's kind of difficult to explain, but I think the second proposition is accurate. If you produce 400 pounds, you pay the lower tax rate for the first 100, and then the higher tax rate from the 100 mark to the 400 mark. And it also does go across license type. Like if you hold more than one license, and like if you have two 1 acre licenses, you're going to break the 1,000 pound mark on your first license, and then that second license will be all of the cannabis produced under that is over 1,000 pounds will be taxed at the higher rate. So I hope that answers.
Okay. I don't see other questions now, so I'm going to go to some of the the email questions. But if anyone has more questions, just go ahead and ask them of Anna. Here's a simple one: how might this tax benefit Hayfork?
Well, we all have to vote. So I'll second you on that, Julie. We all have to take control of our own destinies, and it's not earmarked. We didn't figure that we'd be able to pass a measure at the threshold necessary for an earmark bill or initiative. So you got to go to the Board of Supervisors chambers and put your case forward if you want to see funds directed to Hayfork. And that's the direct political action that is needed in all communities. So I can't say, especially because the tax is collected all throughout the county. It's collected from all 5 districts. And so it's going into the general fund. And I would love to see a lot of it come to Hayfork. I know we've got, large concentrations of farm here. So I would hope that people who want to see change, begin to step up and take action.
Okay. And then I'm sure you've heard this question before. I think I've heard people ask it of you, but I'll ask it again anyway, which is how much tax revenue do we think this tax will bring in?
Well, it's difficult because it is production based, but you can go off of the state averages, and I actually rounded that up somewhat. The state is estimating an outdoor farm at 10,000 square feet produces 440 pounds. That was from a study done last year by I think it was the Legislative Analyst's Office. But because it's too difficult without having access to the data, like on a daily or weekly basis or something, how many farms are licensed under what type? Mixed light produces more than outdoor. Mixed light 2 produces more than mixed light 1. So if you said a 10,000 square foot farm produces 500 pounds, I think you're fairly well in the middle. And that's going to be, nearly all of the 530 farms that will eventually be licensed. My estimate is right about $3 million. And that's just based off of the numbers that I can work with.
Okay, with all the disclaimers associated with that.
And there are many.
Yeah, we have you on tape, Adrian. I'm kidding. Okay, so do we have any other questions, Anna, regarding that? I'm going to take that as a no. Okay.
There are no other questions specifically for Adrian at this time or Measure G.
Okay, great. Well, Adrian, thank you so much. Totally appreciate your time. Feel free to stick around and listen to everybody else. So next up, we have Kathy Ratliff. Tell me if I'm pronouncing this wrong, but you are going to speak for 3 minutes about measures H and I, the Trinity Life Support Community Services District formation and tax. And then we'll take some questions.
Okay, you can hear me?
Yeah. Can everybody else hear her? Thumbs up. Thumbs up all around.
Okay, thank you, Hayfork Chamber, for having us. My name is Kathy Ratliff. I have been in Trinity County since 1980. I have 33 years in emergency services in Trinity County and 20 years now with Trinity County Life Support as paramedic and administrator. Not a public speaker. I'm going to try to give this to you like I would give a patient report on the ambulance. So this is paramedic Ratliff. We have an ambulance service at risk in need of Measure H and Measure I. Measure H forms a community service district. Measure I is a parcel tax, $45 annually for developed commercial and residential. No tax proposed for vacant parcels, no tax for minor improvements. Treatment has been pared down to essentials. This proposal contains no improvements. It will keep the ambulance service alive as we are with two 24/7 ambulances, one in Weaverville, one in Hayfork. In this large area, we can't serve you safely with less than that. The ambulance service has been protecting staffing by using reserves. We cannot continue that beyond the end of this year, 2020. TCLS is discussing reductions in case we do fail in November, and once we start this, our service will change and not for the better. We'll do everything we can, but it truly does come down to a black and white decision. Save Trinity County Life Support or not. The consequences of not are reduced emergency services. You all can take an EMT class to learn what to do in an emergency, and we wish you would. We'd like to teach you that. But when you call 911, you expect someone to come quickly. You expect competence. You expect reliability and safety. TCLS is that safety net for the community. And if you can value stable emergency services at $45 per year, TCLS is worth saving, and we need saving now. Measure H and I go together. Without a yes on Measure I, it won't go. We need a yes and a yes on H and I. Break for questions.
That was very, very efficient. Thank you. We'll see if we have questions through chat, but I'd also love to ask, there's a couple of questions that came through email. I'm not sure I understand this question, but I'll ask it anyway because maybe you do. How much of this will go toward Trinity County? Does that make sense as a question?
Well, I think I can answer it. This tax will be administered by the county, but the proceeds come to Trinity County Life Support. The tax will generate a total of $258,000.
Okay. And then there's another question. What specifically has changed in your proposal since March? And I assume by March it was whatever was up for vote in March.
Yes, and in March, we came to the community with a much larger ask. We were hoping to address some very real needs. So we deleted three improvements from the table, and this bare bones proposal of H and I will just save us exempt as we are with 224 ambulances.
I'm waltzing around.
The difference in the difference in the first measures, we deleted the addition of 4 medical staff, 4 full-time medical staff. We deleted 24-hour pay for 24-hour shift work for our crews, and we deleted an improved shift structure that is more safe and more attractive for recruitment. So those things are off the table, and we're just asking to keep us as we are.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, thank you. Anna, it looks like we don't have questions in chat, just the email questions.
Yeah, yes. Is there another email question?
No, that was it, just those two.
Okay, there's one coming. There's one coming in the chat. I can see it. Give me just a second.
Type fast. Are you sure one's coming? Because this is really awkward.
Go ahead, then move on.
Okay, we can do, if you don't mind not going anywhere, Kathy, just in case somebody has a question.
Not a bit.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Thank you.
People don't all type as fast as I do, so that could have something to do with it. Okay, so finally we have two people. TPUD candidate Tim Saxon. I'm just kidding, Tim. I know that was a mistake. Oh, actually, if you don't mind, we do actually, yes, if I could just, we do have another question that got in for the ambulance service. We know that the ambulance service serves people from outside the county. What is the long game funding plan so that the burden doesn't fall on landowners? Kathy, if that does that question.
I'm not sure that I do understand the question. Our ambulance service is located within Trinity County.
Okay.
And we serve 85% of Trinity County. The areas that we don't serve are Big Bar, Burnt Ranch, Sawyer, Hawkins Bar, and then in the south, we don't take care of Mad River or Kenton Palm Xenia, but the rest of our service area is in Trinity County. But we are only requesting a parcel assessment on developments, residential and commercial.
If I may, I think the question was, so we know that 911 calls are not exclusive to Trinity County residents, but that the funding that we're asking for is from Trinity County residents. So I'm guessing, I think what the question here is there other funding for sustainability that is not exclusive to Trinity, to parcel owners, if we know that this service is for anyone traveling through our county? Does that make sense?
Oh, you're asking about taking care of patients who are driving through?
Yeah, so we know that the service satisfies a lot of people and not just residents of Trinity County. So
I understand. Okay. Well, we do bill patients, and so we do generate revenue for every patient that we transport, so that those patients do receive a bill.
Got it. Okay. Anna, are you cool with that to move on?
One more question coming. What happens if this measure does not pass?
We are talking about that right now. I have a 5-member board of directors, and we're in discussion on how we will prioritize the reductions that we'll have to make. This year, we would have to reduce expenditures by $100,000, and between that and $200,000, what it amounts to truly is about a 25% reduction in staffing. We're very short-staffed in any management. That was cut long ago, and to protect patient care services. So the cuts that we make, we will do our best to absolutely serve our communities, but we're going to have to do it with less and with fewer people to help.
Okay. Well, I'm going to thank you again, Kathy. We're going to really let you go now, but feel free to stick around. So again, Tim, come back. Sorry about that. We have our sheriff, Tim Saxon, and our county CAO, Dr. Richard Coons. I didn't realize there was a doctor there. My apologies. And they will be talking about Measure K, right? H-I-J-K. Yes, K. So that is the half-cent sales tax. So Tim and Richard, take it away.
I'll go ahead and get started, and then I'll turn it over to Tim, save the best for last. I have to do my disclaimer first. As a appointed county employee, I can't campaign for a particular measure. However, I can tell you the benefit of it if it does pass. So that's what I'll be doing here, is kind of telling you about it and then the benefit of it if it happens to pass. This is a special tax, which means it goes to general fund, but it goes general fund with allocation to law enforcement. It is not a discretionary general fund, and can be can be distributed to all departments. It can only go to law enforcement, and law enforcement is defined as the sheriff's department, the DA's office, and probation. So the distribution of the three would be 66% would go to the sheriff jail, 17% would go to the district attorney, and 16% would go to probation. And what I mean by it's discretionary, it goes straight to those departments, and then the sheriff, chief probation officer, the DA has the authority to use those funds as they feel appropriate within their department. It is flexible funding. It doesn't come earmarked with anything except going to law enforcement, which means that it is a general fund allocation, which allows us to then apply for grants. Many of the grants we apply for are federal or state. They require a local match. And some of the issues we have in Trinity County is we don't have this flexible funding. So this would allow for that flexible funding. So if they want to apply for $500,000 grant and it's a 10% match, they have the $50,000. Let's see. As we know, many of the departments in the county, we receive the bulk of our funding through either state or the federal government. With law enforcement, it is the responsibility of the county. About 80% of the funds that we issue to the sheriff's department are local funds and tax dollars. So it's the budget that is scrutinized the most, and is the one that we want to fund at the maximum rate. So this would allow us to actually increase the funding to the sheriff's department. So that's the intro, and I'll let Tim talk a little bit more about specifics.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you to the Chamber for inviting us to speak on these very important tax measures. And as I've said over and over again, nobody likes taxes, but unfortunately, it's where we're at in today's world. Over the years, law enforcement has specifically suffered some blows to the state of California with its AB 109, put a lot more duties onto local law enforcement, especially the county level, by forcing county jails to take on more responsibility with local incarcerated individuals instead of going to state prison. Well, we've had to fund that with a certain amount of funding that came from the state, but that funding has not gone up. At the same time, recently, Governor Newsom has signed legislation which has reduced or eliminated fines and fees that people pay for certain things during their judicial process, which is, as of this date, we don't know what that's going to impact to our local law enforcement, other than our costs are not going down. So we need to do something, and what the County Board of Supervisors did is they decided to go forward with this measure similar to what other counties and cities have done in the North State, in fact, throughout California, and that is ask the populations, ask the voters to voluntarily increase their sales tax to fund certain activities with their law enforcement. And what this funding will do, if it passes, and as Richard said, it's a 2/3 majority that has to pass this, and that's tough to do in any measure that you want to talk about. But it will fund the Sheriff's Department about 67% of the money that collected. And I believe, based on the last 4-year estimate, and this year obviously is going to be an anomaly, but it would bring about $360,000 to $380,000 to the Sheriff's Department specifically. And what that could do is, for example, that would fund 3.5 positions in the jail if I were to do that, or 2 to 2.5 positions for road patrol. It could fund training, additional vehicles, equipment, things of that nature. And it's something that is desperately needed because, as I've said, and as the county has said over the years, our revenue stream has been flat for 5, 6, 7 years. Costs continue to go up. At some point in time, well, we're already at that point in time. It's the breaking point. If something is not done at this point, we can no longer provide the services that we are right now. people have brought up the fact before, what's to guarantee where this money is going to be spent? Well, the board will not have any decision on where the money gets spent on this particular, this particular tax. It specifically goes to the district attorney, to the probation department, and to the sheriff. So you will have to trust me to spend the money where it needs to go to provide the best possible services to you, the public. Also built into this, since it is a special tax, the board will not or should not be cutting the general fund portion of the sheriff's department budget simply because the additional money comes in from this tax. Now, again, what you have to understand is by increasing the amount of general funding available to all the other departments, this hereby increases that pie that's available to all general fund departments. So this is what enables, for example, the sheriff's department to do more to protect the public.
And sorry, Sheriff Saxon, so you are a bit over, but I have a feeling that you'll be able to return to some of these things because we have a lot of questions that are coming up.
All right.
So I'm going to move into some of the questions. What kind of grants are being applied for that require a match? And either Tim or either of you can answer that.
Well, I'll let Tim say the particular grants, but all grants that are either state and or federal require some sort of match, whether it be in kind or hard dollars. I can't think off the top of my head any grants that we receive that are 100% funded. So most grants do come with that caveat that requires some type of match, whether it be, like I said, in kind or hard cash.
A good example would be the grant that we just got from BSCC with regard to a 3-year, $1 million grant that we got to participate with a juvenile crimes deputy that we're going to be working with the schools. While that's a large sum of money over 3 years, we also have to put in our own match, and that match comes from personnel expenses for ancillary purposes, such as our records techs that have to keep track of statistics, our business manager who has to keep track of different reporting requirements. Then you've got the other costs, paper, computer time, there's radios, there's things of that nature that have to be paid for through our regular expenses through the sheriff's office.
And that's what I mean by the in-kind cost. That's a good example of the in-kind. But what you have to be careful is if we have a records clerk that we're splitting over 5 different grants, you got to be careful you're not double dipping with that records clerk. So that's why the availability of this extra cash is important, because we can't always use in-kind and be creative like that.
Okay, great. There's another question from chat. Will some of this revenue be used for the animal shelter?
It can be. It all depends on where the budget is at that particular time. And again, that's what the people have to trust the sheriff at that particular time. The money goes to the sheriff's operations, either patrol or the jail. And part of the patrol would be allocated towards the animal shelter as well. I can't give you a specific percentage, because what I have to do is every year as we look at the budget and we look at operations, that would determine the need of where the money has to be budgeted.
Yeah, okay, great. That actually is a wonderful segue. Thank you for that. We didn't practice, I promise, which is the question around how do you prioritize where the budget goes? What's the process for prioritization?
That's the team. I get my budget team together, and that's my senior management. It's my patrol staff. It's my jail staff. We meet and we talk about where we need to go in the following year.
We have another chat question. So will any of this money be used for preventative efforts in juvenile or other behavior programs?
Well, as I was just talking about that grant that we just obtained through BSCC, that's a full-time deputy position that will be embedded with the school districts. And so that's going to play a major role, working also with the probation department. So yeah, a lot of this grant money will be going there, and certain budgetary consideration will also be given towards additional training that we can give to the other deputies to also assist with that.
Fantastic. You're still on the hook, Tim, because the questions keep coming in.
Of course.
You thought this was going to be easy. How does this tax compare to other counties? You did mention other counties before, but do you have more details around the comparison?
Other counties have passed anything from a half-cent to 1.5 cents. So if you look at the other counties, this is actually on the low end of what other counties have done. But Trinity County, as we know, it's not an affluent county. We don't have a lot of business here. We don't have a lot of industry here. In our initial conversations that we were having a while back, as we were roundtabling some ideas, we did not feel that a higher percentage tax would be able to be passed. And quite frankly, even a half cent, while we don't see it as a large percentage in tax, it's a tax, and people don't like taxes, obviously. But when you think about a $5 cup of coffee, it's going to add 3 cents to your tax for that cup of coffee. It's on a $100 sale, it's going to add 50 cents to your bill. So, I mean, if you look at it from, the big picture, it's not a huge increase, but it is a tax. So, I mean, but that's how it compares to other cities or counties. It's on the low end.
Yep. Okay. That's really helpful. I think we only have one more question unless something else comes up from chat. This is in their email. It's directed at Richard, and it sounds like it's related to some of the budget conference or the budget meeting, the annual budget meeting, and some of the press around that. I'm interpreting this, but how many of the tax measures need to pass to avoid cuts?
Well, that's kind of a difficult question to answer, because regardless of what passes, doesn't pass, we're going to do everything we can to avoid any type of cuts. And that's what we're able to do this year when it came down to as far as cuts personnel. But as Tim mentioned, we are on a flat trajectory with our revenues. They just aren't going up, but our costs do go up. Things we don't have control of, our benefits, the workers' comp, all those things go up. So I don't have a number per se, but this year we had $17 million in asks, and we had around $12 million in revenues. So by the time it was all done using cash carryover, we had to make up that $5 million gap. So this would not solve our problems, but this would definitely assist. But combined with the cannabis tax and this, it would be a significant benefit to the community, because we have quite a gap each year that we have to manage.
Okay. Okay.
And if I could just follow up on that real quick, to give you an example, the sheriff's office is the largest consumer of the discretionary general fund. There's no doubt about it. This year, my budget ask was about $9.8 million is what I asked for to run the detention facility and patrol and the animal shelter and everything like that. And I was cut in the neighborhood of about $300,000. And so we had to do away with things like new patrol vehicles, training, things like that. I was able to keep my staffing at full staffing only because I had senior people that retired this year. So they were considerable higher costs because of their higher PERS expenses. So I was able to hire new employees at a lower PERS cost. As we go on, I won't be able to keep that up. So, and that's what we're talking about. Costs continue to go up. So.
Okay. Well, that's very helpful. Thank you so much, Tim and Richard. Really appreciate your time. I know you're very busy. We have actually about 6 minutes. We're 6 minutes ahead of schedule. So even though I'm really eager for our Trinity PUD candidates to start introducing themselves, we actually have one more question for Kathy. If Kathy's still there.
Yes.
And I think it's fair to go backwards because I think people are just starting to kind of figure out this whole chat thing. So let me just ask you one more question from chat. So this person does say that you really do need more funding than $48 parcel in order to keep your employees safe on shift. So they're agreeing with you. If we pass this tax, would there be an opportunity to raise it to a better functioning level in the future?
Most definitely. this will keep us alive in order to keep pursuing all the options. And we've done a lot of research and looked at many different plans to try to stabilize. But one thing that the district formation does for us is it gives, as a healthcare district, we are able to access government reimbursements of Medi-Cal shortfalls, which we're not able to do as a nonprofit. And so there is assistance there that's very possible. It's all with the election and changes that are coming. Hopefully when the dust settles, it will all still be there, and those programs will help us. And just continue, and if the county improves with their funding, it may be that we can definitely, and we will just, we're very focused on gaining those improvements for the crews. These people need a better shift structure and an improved safety and less fatigue. And they're doing an awesome job with 100% safety, 100% in our care of patients. And we have to do this to care for them.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for jumping back in again. Are Tim and Richard still there?
Julie, could I just jump in one thing?
Yeah.
I'd like to put in one hat that I do wear as a board of director, and that is on the Trinity County Life Support.
Okay.
And I've been on the board of directors for about 10 years. Prior to that, I was on there for about 6 years. Kathy has been doing a fantastic job when she was the general manager, and we don't come to the public requesting this without doing our homework. And that is, Kathy has done everything possible to go after every grant possible to get things like new ambulances, new equipment, cardiac equipment, gurneys, powered gurneys to make it safer for the employees so that they would not suffer injuries lifting people in and out of the ambulances. For years, we've been going after grants from all various sources, USDA, so on and so forth. This is the last resort. There are no other options. And as a board member, I just want to say that we've been operating on the reserves for several years now. Those reserves are going down quicker and quicker. The reimbursements from the federal government with regard to Medicaid and Medi-Cal, they're going down faster and faster, and that's why the company is being forced to go in this direction. And I just want you to know that the company is not taking this lightly. This is something that is sorely needed for Trinity County. Without this, we are actually looking at a public safety issue, and that being when somebody calls 911, there could be that notification is, well, the ambulance is in Reading right now. We'll get to you as soon as we can.
Yeah.
And I certainly don't want that to happen.
Yep. Okay. Thank you for adding that. We do have time for one more question. It seems like a question for Richard. It's actually, it's funny, we're in Hayfork and it's taken 50 minutes before cannabis came up, so I'm shocked, but it is related to cannabis. So Richard, why isn't the county issuing cannabis licenses if the tax is so important to getting us out of the red?
Well, we're kind of off topic between the Measure K and a cannabis license. That's a complete different story. Well, let's put this, if the cannabis tax passes, we will be able to increase staff in there. When we started the cannabis program in Trinity County, we hired code enforcement, code compliance, but we didn't expand the staff. The staff that was running the building and planning department are the staff now that are also running the cannabis program. For example, Humboldt County, when they started their cannabis program, they hired 17 planners. So we are grossly understaffed. And until we can fix that, there will be a continued delay in cannabis licensing.
Okay, well, I appreciate your thinking on your toes despite it being off topic. Okay, great. Well, thank you guys. Now we should definitely move on to our Trinity PUD candidates. Thank you, everyone speaking for the measures. Totally appreciate your time. We're going to go through some introductions. Again, we've got 3 minutes each. I'm sorry, I'm going to be the timing police. But why don't we start with Alex Cousins?
Okay, it looks like that light's kind of in everybody's eyes. I'm gonna move this a little bit. Anyway, my name is Alex. My name is Alex Cousins. Currently appointed board member since May of 2019. I took the place of Tom Ludden when he had to step down. I was born in Hayfork. I've lived in Hayfork for a number of years. Now I'm based in Weaverville with my wife and my children. Got a fairly strong community and business relationship throughout Trinity County. I've worked at the county planning department, the Trinity County RCD, the Watershed Center, and I'm currently the sales manager at the Trinity River Lumber Company. Let's see, a couple of things that are pretty important to me as far as, you know, the Trinity PUD, obviously reliability and safety. I'm on the Forestry Ad Hoc Committee, and so we're looking at widening our power line right-of-ways to prevent any trees from falling on and to increase reliability. Obviously, maintaining fair and affordable rates is important, so whatever we can do to ensure that that our power allotment stays with us and is available for everybody is important. Looking at opportunities, you know, business opportunities, whether it's expanding electric vehicle charging stations, whatever other businesses may come into the community are important. And then I'm also looking at developing forest health projects up in the upper end of the at the lake. So trying to figure out ways to maintain and improve our water delivery into that lake, because that's the lifeline of our power. Whether it's going down the river or power generation, we need as much water as we can in the lake. So through forest health projects, thinning, etc., I think we can do a better job of managing that land up there. You know, as far as Hayfork in general, when I lived there, I was fairly involved with the community. I was a basketball coach for a year. I worked at the Watershed Center. I'm also involved with a couple other organizations that have helped out Hayfork, Trinity River Community Partners. We donated the handicap chair to the swimming pool. We bought the reserve champion steer from Kimberly Gritz last year and donated that to the Roderick Center. I'm also on the board of the Highland Art Center, so I'm fairly involved in the community. I'm a member of Rotary. Let's see, I'm on the board of the Friends of the Trinity County RCD. So, you know, I've got my hands in a lot of different aspects of the community, which allows me to engage with different people and understand, you know, what's going on in Trinity County, let alone having lived here and, you know, being a part of this community as I've raised my children. So I think in a nutshell, that's me.
Great.
Are we taking questions now or just introducing?
We'll go through all the intros and then we'll take questions. And just so if anyone's joined since we last did the intro, we're taking questions through chat. So you can just chat your questions to Anna and then she'll read them off to me once we're asking questions. But right now we're going to move on to Kelly Gant. If you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, good evening. I'm Kelly Gant, and I'm running for one of the seats on the Trinity PUD board. I can have to get glasses so I can actually read my talk. So I was first elected to the Trinity PUD in 2011, and then I ran unopposed in 2015. I've served 2 years as board president, and then in 2018, I was appointed to represent the electric utilities in the Southwest states of the U.S. on the American Public Power Association Policy Council. I bring to the board about 23 years of corporate experience, most of that at a director level doing project management. In doing that project management, I oversaw multiple teams over multiple departments and was responsible for some multi-million-dollar budgets. I moved to Trinity Center in 2004 and started my Trinity volunteer journey, which has included the Trinity County Chamber of Commerce and the Trinity High School Dreammakers Scholarship Gala. All my volunteer roles that I have done since my 20s, I think the Trinity PUD has been my most challenging. It's the most demanding, but it's still the most rewarding position that I've had. And I take my role to deliver power safely to our customers because it impacts their daily lives and even their bottom line of their businesses. You would think that delivering this power is pretty straightforward and should be simple. But in reality, delivering electricity these days is very complex. It's highly regulated. And as we're finding, it's political. So my experience in project management, my 8 years on the Trinity PUD board, hundreds of hours I have spent talking to policymakers in Washington, D.C. and in Sacramento, gives me a set of skills and knowledge and networking that I think will help Trinity PUD navigate this curvy, bumpy road that we have in front of us that has a lot of potholes in it. My top 3 challenges or priorities during my next board term would be to address some critical issues. One, how do we fairly distribute our remaining power allocation that we have and still leave some reserve for future housing and diverse job creation businesses that might come along the way? Weaver Mill needs a hotel. We have other things that need to get done. We've also done 91 line extensions in Hayfork over the last 3 years, which is a record. We've never been expanding our system that much. So there's a little stress on the power that we need to get a handle on.
And Kelly, you have about 30 seconds. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Okay. And then we also need to further harden our power delivery system. Alex had mentioned the line clearance, and then we need to keep the district financially sound by still maintaining low powers, but building a fiscal reserve for droughts and unexpected events and system improvements.
That was a very impressive way to get through the 30 seconds that you had left. Appreciate that. Okay, who do we have next? So Andy Johnson. Thank you, Kelly.
Welcome.
All right, thank you. Hello, my name is Andy Johnson. I'm running for the Trinity PUD Board of Directors. First, thank you to the Hayfork Chamber for sponsoring and putting this event together. It's a good opportunity to get out when I can't go knocking on doors, and I think it's great that everyone's attending to get involved with what I feel is like a pretty we're not in the spotlight, our PUD district. So my connections to Trinity County go back to 2000 and 2001. When I met my wife, Tekla, a Trinity County native, over the years, we spent much of our summer vacations and holidays visiting family in Big Bar. After being away from California for 15 years, we finally made the choice to move back in 2018. We lived downriver for a year before purchasing our current home in Weaverville. Tekla and I have 2 children, a son in 6th grade at Junction City School, and a daughter who's a senior at Trinity High. I have a degree in architecture and have worked in the architecture, engineering, and construction field for the past 16 years. I've been an architectural and structural designer for a wide variety of project types and clients, including municipal utilities and power generation plants. I currently work for a nationwide full-service engineering firm. I spend a large portion of my time doing project management for industrial and manufacturing project types. I also serve on a technology steering committee for the company. So why would you choose me for the district? I have a long interest in power generation, renewable energy, resilient power grids, and water policy. Once we moved to Trinity, I realized what an asset PUD is. Trinity PUD is a steward for our most valuable asset, our water. What do we get in exchange for it? Cheap, carbon-free energy. Through my career experience, I've worked on behalf of many clients to size their electric and utility needs and request to install new or upgraded services. I understand the business customer who can benefit from our low rates. I also understand the diplomacy that can work with various permitting agencies and government entities. I have experience managing large capital projects and assisting organizations making difficult budget decisions. I have a proven history of serving as a trusted advisor. On top of this professional experience, I can offer fresh ideas and new energy. I look forward to serving the ratepayers of the district with honesty, integrity, and transparency. Thank you. Please consider a vote for me, Andy Johnson.
Great. Thank you, Andy. Next, we have Kyle McDonald.
Hi there. My name's Kyle McDonald. For those of you that don't know me, my wife is Police Peralta, and we run the Mountain Marketplace in downtown Weaverville. Moved here in 1999 to start our family, and I've held lots of different positions and jobs throughout the county, anywhere from manual labor in my 20s to being a brand ambassador and sales rep around the state. We have 3 sons that have gone through the Trinity public schools systems, and 2 that are in the high school right now at Trinity High School, 1 that graduated and is off to college. I've spent 16 years coaching and youth mentoring, soccer and wrestling mainly, and I've decided that now is the time to be a voice. I've been here for 21 years and I'm a family man. I have a business on Main Street and I've been an active member of this community, and it's just time to put my voice in and help our community. I want to work with a board that's willing to secure and pave the road to a positive future in Trinity County, making sure that our water is protected, that we have all our power needs are met, our infrastructure's met. What does the future look like? A safe future, protecting our lines from fire danger, maybe moving lines underground. There's a lot of ideas to explore. I would like to see diversification. You know, last year we saw the failure of the dam in Oroville, and it'd be nice to take advantage of the opportunities that are in California with solar and wind and battery and diversification of our power, so we don't have all our eggs in one basket.
And Kyle, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you have about 15 more seconds.
Thank you. And other than that, I'd like to keep up with new technologies. We know that electric cars are coming in the future and they have a huge demand for electric power. I'd like to help bring some education to the local schools to teach children how our local public utilities districts work. And thank you. I'll let everything else go to the questions.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Kyle. If it's not obvious, I am doing this alphabetically, so that would mean that Tom Waltz is next.
Okay, got myself unmuted. Good evening, everyone. My name is Tom Waltz. I have been in Trinity County. I actually started timber cruising in 1980, doing some Forest Service timber sales. And in 1983, my family and I moved to Hayfork. I was employed by Sierra Pacific Industries as the timber manager and log buyer, log acquisition for the Hayfork sawmill. And then in 1988, the Sierra Pacific Industries bought the timberlands from the Santa Fe Southern Pacific Railroad Company, and I moved to Weaverville to manage those timberlands, which I ended up doing until April of 2019, when I retired after 39 years of service to Sierra Pacific Industries and the forest products industry. So I have a lot of experience being out in the woods. And one of the things that I have brought to the board is the ability to look at perceived obstacles and try and find opportunities. And that's really where I'm going to focus the rest of these couple minutes talking about, is the opportunities I see for the Trinity PUD to benefit our local customers. First off, we need to have continued reliable, affordable electricity, but many people see obstacles. They see a right-of-way that might be too narrow. I see opportunities, because those right-of-ways that are too narrow, that have danger trees, also have potential to help landowners reduce the fire risk around their property. So when PUD comes in with a removal along power lines, I believe there's an opportunity to work with a professional forester to also do some exemptions around homes, to do some fire safe clearing and stuff. So I think there's an opportunity that we haven't really examined in the past. The other big opportunity that I see is this growing need to supply our agricultural industry in Trinity County, and that agricultural industry is growing rapidly. Our what we call high impact service, which is over 9,999 kilowatts per month. Most of those are agricultural 600 amp plus services. Those have improved quite a bit. We went from 0 2 years ago, and now revenue from those high impacts is up to 15%. So I think that there's a real opportunity to continue to grow our service and our customer base. And when we do that, we're going to have additional ability to hire more people, good local jobs. So I'm Tom Waltz, and I'd appreciate your job and be your voice for opportunity.
Great, perfect. Thank you, Tom. We have one more candidate to give an intro. That's on our right. You're on.
Thank you so much. I want to also thank the Hayfork Chamber of Commerce for putting this on. Very excited to be here with everybody tonight. I am on our right. I am currently the Executive Vice President and part owner of Flora, which is a cannabis consulting company here in Trinity County. I grew up in Southeast Iowa, right on the Mississippi, but my mother has lived in Trinity County for the past 10 years or so. And this has been one of my homes since then, spending many summers here as I went through high school and then through college. I graduated from California Lutheran University in Thousand Oaks, California in May of 2016, magna cum laude, with a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology and a minor in Psychology. I moved back to Iowa after college and briefly worked as a fundraising coordinator for the Muscular Dystrophy Association, and then found my way back out here in Trinity County in August of 2017, where our family started Flora that next spring. Though I've been involved in all of the communities I've lived in my whole life, as a growing small business in an ever-changing industry, I waited until now to formally join a board to ensure that my focus and my time can be fully well spent, thus making a greater impact for my community. My current profession has allowed for experience in environmental permitting, specifically around writing and reviewing CEQA documents, which is directly related to the upcoming right-of-way project that Trinity PUD is proposing. I also work every day with local and state agencies, such as the California Department of Food and Agriculture, the Forest Service, Department of Fish and Wildlife, Water Resource Control Board, and more. Not only does my work experience make me a qualified candidate for TPUD, my education has helped to craft my innate ability to connect, empathize, listen, and thus act for people. Specifically in Hayfork, and what I would like to do if elected to the Trinity PUD board, not only becoming a part of the right-of-way project that's being proposed with my environmental permitting background, I also look forward to exploring more creative ways to upgrade infrastructure, specifically around economic development. The more businesses we can bring into Trinity County, the more power we can sell, the greater revenue we have to develop infrastructure, specifically in Hayfork about restoring power lost from fires. Other alternatives to explore as well in regards to alternative power sources. I heard somebody speak about diversification, and I agree with that, is exploring fuel reduction options that might allow biomass power generation or cogeneration plants at some of the Hayfork mill sites that are currently unused. I would also like to work to make the meetings more transparent and more accessible. Currently, right now, it takes a little bit of work to get agenda items sent out to people, and I want to make sure it's just the same as any other public board in our county. You know, historically, board members of the Trinity PUD have been appointed, and I think this is a great opportunity this year to use our voice and elect the people that can definitely make a change and fit this organization. I think it's time for a fresh face, new ideas, and endless energy, to which I have. I ask everybody to do the right thing November 3rd, vote on a right, and make sure to check out my Facebook page after this. Any questions you have, comments, concerns, I'd love to hear it, as well as an upcoming golf tournament that the campaign's holding that all donations day of will be going to the Golden Age Center as well. Thank you so much.
Okay, that was almost perfectly 3 minutes. Thank you for not making me nag you. Well, great. So thank you everybody for the introductions. Got a lot of great candidates, so this will be a good conversation. We do have a bunch of questions, so this is great. Some email, some chat, and actually someone has my private text, so I have a private text question. So I'm going to start with that. Considering the recent campfire, what steps have been taken to prevent a similar occurrence with TPUD's power structure? I'm just going to, I don't want to force everyone to answer, so I'm not going to call on everyone at a time. If you want to answer a question, go ahead, and then we'll just make sure everybody gets a chance to talk. If that becomes chaotic and doesn't work, we'll figure something else out. But why don't we start with that? Who would like to take a crack at that question? Okay, Tom, go for it.
All right. Like I said, I've only been on the board for 6 months. When Clarence Rose moved to Oregon, and the position opened up, I wanted to serve our community. And so I applied and was interviewed and accepted on the board. And one of the first things I wanted to bring to the board was this idea of prioritizing and assessing risk. And the risk to our power lines generally stems from when trees or limbs or birds come in contact with the line, and there's a connection that creates this electrical energy that potentially can cause a fire. So the board, in order to try and reduce that risk, has allocated a very large sum of money to try and do more line clearing. We're spending about $100,000 a month to clear additional power lines to give more or reduce that risk. And we're also purchasing a number of non-expulsion fuses. On every power line going into a transformer, there's fuses that if there's a connection from a limb, those fuses will disconnect the power in order to not have a continual voltage going through. So those expulsion fuses that are relics from the old PG&E purchase have a potential to create a fire. And so what we're doing is changing out as many of those fuses with non-expulsion fuses, and thus greatly reducing the risk of fire. So we're being very proactive, spending a lot of money right now. One set of fuses costs $300 each. We've already changed out over 300 sets of fuses already. So we're spending a lot of money trying to reduce that fire risk. It's a great opportunity. Okay, great, thank you. Anybody else like to pipe in on that question? Anna?
Yeah, I would like to. I would just like to add to that, of course, fire prevention is around right-of-way increases, like Tom mentioned. I think also exploring opportunities, and this is just exploring, of course, exploring opportunities to dive into broadband and underground lines, looking at the geographical regions of our county, different sections that might make more sense in some areas to go underground versus other areas it might make more sense to increase the right-of-way. So just to echo Tom's sentiments, but also add that option to also explore.
Okay, great. Anybody else? Plenty of questions, so don't worry if you want to skip one or two.
I'd like to jump in on this real quick.
Okay.
I think that, you know, in addition to what everybody said, you know, the expansion of our right-of-ways is probably the #1 thing that's going to help reduce the impacts of wildfire. And we are also working to increase the number of crews. Just this year, we were able to expand from 2 crews to 3 crews, which helps us to respond a lot quicker. We've diversified those crews, so where we had 4-person crews, 2 4-person crews, we now have 3 3-person crews, so we can be a little bit quicker to respond to different areas as needed. And then also working on the capacity of our lines. So, you know, we added a new transformer into the Hayfork substation, which is going to increase the durability of the system, which will ultimately help with our delivery of our power.
Great. And Kelly?
So the other thing we're doing right now is it's called single shot. So as soon as it gets warm, anytime a branch crosses over the lines, it shuts that whole line down. During the winter, you'll notice that if a branch falls on the lines, you can see the power kind of go up and down in your house like 3 times, and then it shuts off. As soon as it gets hot, we put on a single shot. So the minute there's the circuit closes, we shut the power line down, and then our crew has to go out and physically go to every single pole and check it out before we bring it back on again.
Great. And Kyle.
Yeah, I know that we're already starting to do this in Trinity County and with the TPUD, but using drones and technology, drones are becoming a lot less expensive, and it's safer for our crews to be able to inspect lines, and they can get a very clear inspection of where branches are, so they're not wasting time looking manually at 450 miles of power line. I'd like to see that. Drone technology has come a long way, and we could do a lot of inspection through technology. And then on the other aspect, if there is an opportunity for sections of line to go underground where the terrain isn't too horrible to work with, that's something that I would like to see as well.
Perfect. Okay.
I'll just add there, as far as buried lines, I think that's a great place to go. It's obviously very expensive to bury 450 miles of the primary distribution. But there are areas that are going to be cheaper than others. And I hope as we explore the cost of maintaining 130-foot right-of-way, increased vegetation management, and the costs that come along with this project, I hope we also are exploring, and I hope to see some numbers behind what it costs to bury lines in especially high hazard areas and areas, again, the low hanging fruit where it's more affordable to bury them.
Great. Okay. I hope my text messaging friend is happy with all those answers. It was really thorough. Some of you folks have already touched on this, but I'll just give everyone the opportunity and others can expand. What do you think are challenges unique to Hayfork that TPUD can address? Who would like to take a crack at that first?
I will. I'm fine with that. So I think I addressed this a little bit in my introduction, but just to reiterate, you know, in regards to developing more infrastructure through economic development, restoring some of the service lines that have been lost from fires, whether they're the current fires or past fires that lines have not yet been restored from, obviously that would be something in the Hayfork area I would be looking to do as a TPUD board member, as well as going on that same line of economic development, using some of the empty industrial sites there in Hayfork to potentially explore cogeneration and biomass systems would not only bring more jobs into, you know, creating those plants, but we would have some other alternative power options than just the dam to look into. As well as, of course, supporting ag industry development with, as Tom was mentioning, and I'm glad he did, with power development specifically in Hayfork as well. Supporting our local ag industry is definitely something huge from my personal and professional opinion.
I'm not sure how we're lining up here, but I think that, you know, Hayfork being a little bit more remote than Weaverville, maintaining reliable powers is always important in Hayfork. When the power goes out, you know, how quickly can we get it restored? And some of the things that we're doing, including the additional transformer that we put in Hayfork, is going to help with that. Increasing and improving our line conditions is going to help Hayfork, so that as the increased demand in the Hayfork area expands, that our line capacity is there, so that all of our users can get the power that they need and that it's safe. Hayfork is a little bit more remote than Weaverville, and there's a lot of houses that are at the end of the line, and there's not a lot of houses on those lines, so it's not very cost effective to serve those homes, but we need to do everything we can to make sure that we can maintain those lines in the same condition that we maintain every other line. You know, it comes down to kind of a cost benefit. If you have one house on a line versus 10 houses on a line, how do you justify maintaining that line? And I think we need to do everything we can to ensure that all of those homes that are way out there maintain the power that they already have.
Okay, thank you. I feel like a school teacher right now. Terrible. Kelly, what would you like to say?
So in Hayfork, we have, as I had mentioned, we did 91 line extensions over the last 3 years, and many of those new customers are part of our high load customers. Some of the money that they spun off of that, we put back into the Hayfork substation for stability. So that substation is much more stable and reliable than it has been in the past. So it's the community kind of investing in itself. But every substation has a limited amount of power that it can support and capacity. So one of the things, that we can do down the future is how much do we need and how much is it going to cost to actually upgrade that substation to provide all the power that's being asked for.
Great, perfect. Does anybody else want to answer that question?
Yeah, just this is Tom Waltz again. Just a quick add to that is that we've just recently made one additional minor change, but it can be significant over in Hayfork, in that when there is a line extension request, we're giving each of those requests the information as to what it would cost to put a line in underground, as well as overhead, with the additional clearance necessary to make that overhead installation be stable. So individuals are getting an opportunity to choose which they would prefer. Do they want to do underground? If they go overhead, to understand how many danger trees would have to be removed. So I think they have a new option, a new opportunity, and I think it's a good step forward for the PUD.
Okay, and I think Kyle, you had something to say?
Yeah, I'd just like to echo a few things of upgrades in infrastructure. I think that's going to benefit Hayfork, bringing in the diversity of possible solar and battery options to create a little bit of independence in outlying areas, and increasing the customers. If people want power, we should do our best to bring it to them, because more customers online are future revenue that just goes, it's reciprocal. It goes back into the community. So to expand on that beyond Hayfork into Southern Trinity, because I think we're in this area as well. A lot of people in Southern Trinity are on on PG&E lines, and it would be really nice to unify Trinity under one company that has its roots right here in Trinity, so that we're accountable to Trinity County. We don't have to rely on a bigger corporation like PG&E.
Great, thank you, Kyle. Anyone else before I move on to another question? Oh, Andy, yeah, that's right. You didn't get to go yet. Sorry.
Stab at it. Well, I think communications with the utility district customers is important. I know, I guess I just want to acknowledge the kind of a rift between the folks in Hayfork and Southern Trinity, and kind of the perception of the governing bodies that come out of Weaverville. I think it's important we have a well-balanced representation on the board. And I do know we have one person from Hayfork. But I think keeping people engaged and listening to other voices, and not just those that are loudest in the Weaverville area, is important. The other thing is, since Kyle brought up, hopefully there's questions about this as well, but expanding the district into areas like Post Mountain and Trinity Pines, I think there's an opportunity there, and probably some more high load. So obviously will require studies, high impact customers that don't mind paying $1,500 plus a $50,000 connection fee. So.
Great. Okay. I have to say, personally, I knew this was an important election, but after hearing all your answers, like, this is really important. You guys are doing important stuff. Everybody should vote. Okay, I'm going to now try and read this incredibly small font for this next question, which I really like a lot. In these times of drought and climate change, and as one of the only power sovereign counties in the state, managing a valuable water resource for the entire state, how will you address political pressure to use the water elsewhere, and continue to protect and serve our Trinity County community and natural resources. So, who would like to take that one first? Kyle, you hit the button.
Okay, basically our water is the most important asset, obviously, that we have in Trinity County, and we need to keep our allotment, because if we don't use it over years, over time, eventually that will get whittled away by the big fish in Washington, in the state of California. If we don't use it, we lose it, you know. So that's it. That's the essential model. We want to keep expanding the power usage and encouraging the use of our allotment here, so that we can keep the power on. That's it. That's basically one of our biggest jobs, I believe, as the board, is to be able to focus on making the right connections with the right people in the right places to make sure that we're keeping our allotment. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No. Well, I think it's important to say that our power is not based on a use it or lose it. It's based on power generation through the program. And so what they'll do is they'll take a 20-year average. Every 5 years, they'll take a 20-year average of how much power was generated prior, and that's our allocation. And it is going down. You know, in the last 15 years, you know, we've gotten 65 gigawatts less than we used to have, and if that continues down, we're going to continue to lose the amount of power that we have that's available. So I think, you know, much of rural America is stuck with decisions that get made elsewhere, whether it's Sacramento or Washington. So I personally believe that we have to stand up and figure out what it is we can do within that system. You know, there's going to be water that goes to the fish, there's going to be water that goes to the farmers, and we generate power in between both of those places, more so with the water that goes to the farmers. But we can look at the opportunity, like I talked about before, and figure out how can we increase and maintain the water going into the lake so that that power is generated, so that our allocation remains as high as it can be, so that we can look into that expansion.
Great. And Anna, you wanted to talk?
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely understand where everyone's coming from, that, you know, of course, our power comes from the water in our dam that goes down to the Central Valley. And it's a great source of renewable energy. Something else, though, to consider are alternative power sources. If we have alternative power sources, then we're not using as much water, thus we're going to be saving more water, or could allocate more water towards fish and wildlife if that becomes necessary during drought years. So making sure that we take the time and the energy to explore all alternative sources of power for Trinity County, I think, is integral to our future, not only power-wise and sustaining power and keeping the lights on, but integral to our mountains and our fish and our wildlife.
And I guess I'd like to add on to Anna's thought there about diversification and other power sources, and looking at the long term. So we know right now all our eggs are in one basket, that water in that lake, and it's valuable water to the entire state. If we were to go through a situation where it was no longer a public entity, the Bureau of Reclamation sold it off to the highest bidder and it was privatized. This has happened to other utilities. And, you know, let's say 15 years from now, all of a sudden PG&E owns that and is charging at a higher rate. We need to just really plan ahead. And I think diversifying, moving away from that. We know we're going through longer drought years. We know the river does need an adequate supply of water. I think looking at solar and battery power storage, other alternatives like that, really could help us out.
Okay, thank you. And Kelly, you had your, I see you.
I want to touch on what Alex said about the reduction in our allocation. That all started in 2005 when the record of decision was finalized and all the court cases were ended. Prior to that, 80% of all the release out of Trinity Dam went down into the Sacramento River, and it goes through multiple power generators. It's the most productive system in the state of California. So it was 80-20. After the Record of Decision 2005, it's now about 50-50. And so every 5 years, they look back 20 of how much power is produced. And since there's more water going down the Trinity River, there's less power produced, which means our allocation goes down. So this is where one of the people mentioned this, we have control. This is the balance. It's the balance between how much water do you want in the river and the impact that's going to be to not enough electricity or increased electric rates. So we get to decide where that balance level is. Right now it's pretty solid in law that it's not going to change more than 50-50. So it's how do we work around that right now? So that's kind of why we're losing some of our allocation, and we have one more adjustment. Well, we'll have another adjustment. And then every drought year will impact that also. So like a number of people have mentioned, we may have to go look at some other sources.
Okay. Anyone else? Yep, Tom?
I think one of the main things that we can advocate for is to develop a minimum storage level in the lake. Right now, if we had 4 drought years in a row, it would be very difficult for the lake to recharge enough to even generate any electricity. So I think having a minimum lake level would be a good step in the right direction to alleviate some of those concerns.
Okay, okay. I think everybody had a chance to answer that question. So I will move on to another one. So with Trinity PUD having the lowest electric rates in the state of California, congratulations, what changes do you feel are needed? Kelly.
I'll take that one.
Okay.
I'll be the brave one. So like a number of people have mentioned is, and especially Tim Saxon mentioned this, that the cost of doing everything is going up. And we do have the lowest power rates, and we haven't raised our rates in a long time, and the expenses keep going up. So the disadvantage of having the lowest is Trinity PUD, we don't have a lot of reserves left. And if we want to do these big projects like upgrading substations and undergrounding lines and doing more line clearances, that money needs to come from somewhere. So this is going to be the discussion, I think, is going to be really big over the next 4 years, is how do we keep the lowest rates and do all the things that we need to do to stay sustainable for multiple generations to come.
Thank you. Who wants to be the next brave one? Or not? We can just move forward. Okay, I will move forward with the next question. So this is from email. What changes would you introduce to increase transparency of TPUD and the board's activities and decisions?
Yeah, I'll take that one if you don't mind, Julia.
I don't mind.
Something I mentioned in my introduction that's really important is making sure that first of all, agendas and agenda items are readily available on the website. As of now, the agenda is posted in a timely manner, a little less than a week ahead of time. But the items that are a part of it, you need to email one of the administrators over at Trinity PUD in order to get those specifics about what's happening on the agenda sent to you. Our Board of Supervisors and our Planning Commission have the ability to post everything right in time for everybody to see all the items on the agenda ahead of time, instead of having to email in for access, as well as the website itself needing just an overall overhaul update, get it more into today's world with some more web applications, mapping of where our trucks are, nice and bold on the front of our website, ETAs and power outages are going to be out. And that increases our transparency, as well as the availability of accessing more information on our power. This has been such an educational experience for me already. I look forward to continuing that education, but I think we could have some more readily available resources to learn about what goes on at Trinity PUD on our website as well.
I'd like to just follow up and second that, making things available to people on the web. So our board of supervisor meetings, for example, are being published, and some meetings have 125 people that watch. When I can't attend a meeting, I do tune in and watch a recorded version on YouTube. I think that'd be a great step as well, being as these board meetings do happen in the middle of a business day and business hours. But I think Anna was spot on there with making information more accessible, and also getting more community engagement. If more people tuned in and saw that, hey, there's some interesting discussion. Another side note, it seems that most votes in the last couple of years have all been unanimous. There's something to be said for good staff reports that can, convince people and get the vote. But I'd like to know, what kind of discussion really does go on in these meetings. I think people should see that, and putting more information online would be great for that.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you, Andy, and for it.
I think as a current member, as a current board member appointed, I can agree with that. I think staff reports need to be online. There's no problem doing that. I think that now that we have the digital age is forced upon us with the current situation that we're in, we're learning about how to have distant meetings and have Zoom meetings and have everything recorded. There's no secrets at the PUD. I think that in the past there hasn't been a lot of interest. I've only been on the board for a year and a half, and I haven't seen a lot of people come to the board meetings. They've been they're during the day, but people can come and they can ask questions. I think our board members are very available as needed. So the changes that people are talking about are very easy to implement and probably very necessary. So, I would imagine those changes will happen very soon.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else like to answer that?
Yeah, I just would have people recognize that we are a public utility, and that the information that takes place in our meetings is totally available to the public. We act under the Brown Act and Robert's Rules of Order, and those people who are interested have the ability to log in, either phone call or video right now with the COVID restrictions. And we're looking forward to when people can finally come back in and attend in person, because public input is an important part of the Trinity PUD, our public utility district.
Do you mean staring at people in little squares on a screen just doesn't do it for you? Okay, so Anna just told me probably have time for one more question, and I selfishly said, no, let's try for two, because I could probably keep you guys here all night, but you probably wouldn't like that. So I'm gonna see what we can squeeze in before we have to go. Let's see. Oh, yes, this is a great one. So anyone who's on a board, I've been on a few, knows it's a totally different animal from anything you can experience elsewhere. So one of our viewers wants to understand what your experience working on boards has been. And that's a question for each candidate. So Kelly, sorry to put you on the spot, but can we start with you?
Oh, okay. I'll just summarize the boards that I'm on here in Trinity County. So I'm president of the Trinity County Chamber of Commerce. I'm on the board of the Trinity County Visitors and Development Bureau. I'm on the PUD board. I'm on the board of the Trinity Lake Revitalization Alliance. I'm on the Shasta Cascade Wonderland Association board, which markets the 8 counties in Northern California. And I've been appointed by the governor to the North Coast Water Quality Control Board.
Great. You didn't make any of those up?
Nope.
Okay, cool. Who else would like to answer
I'll go
that?
next.
Okay, great.
I think I mentioned it in my introduction as well. I'm actually not currently on any boards here in Trinity County, nor have I ever officially been on a board. And I'm readily to admit that because this is the opportunity that I've been waiting for as well. I've been 4 or 5 years out of college, and in that time I have been focusing on my career and making sure that I can get myself to a position where I can now take the time to be involved on a board like this one. So I may not have the long list of experience in regards to boards. I do have experience running a successful business as well as leadership groups throughout my entire education system, volunteer opportunities in my church back home that have built me to the person I am today that's ready to take on this position.
Thank you, Anna. Who would like to go next? Tom?
I'll jump in. Currently serving on the Trinity Collaborative, have served on the Resource Advisory Committee, which is the allocation of the federal dollars to local resource conservation projects. And I have served on the State Board of Forestry. I was appointed by Governor Schwarzenegger, served for 4 years. During that time, we rewrote the state fire plan. We revised the power line exemption process. And we also passed the anadromous cell-mounted protection rules, which greatly increased the watercourse protection rules for timber harvest plans. So I have extensive board activity at the state level, and the PUD board fits right in with that as we deal with a number of very similar type issues. A lot of natural resource issues that we're dealing with at the PUD level that I previously dealt with at the state level on the State Board of Forestry.
Thank you, Tom. I think we've got 3 others left to answer that question. This person was very specific. Wants to hear from everybody.
This is Alex. So I'm currently a member of Rotary, which isn't a board, but it's an organization. I'm on the Friends of the Trinity County RCD, the president. I'm also on the board of the Highland Art Center, the art gallery in Weaverville, and I'm on the Trinity River Community Partners as the vice president, and I'm the clerk of the board of the Trinity PUD. And this is my daughter, Julie.
Hi, Julie. Is she on any boards that we should know about?
No, she's not.
Okay. I think Kyle or Andy, did you want to answer that question?
You know, I don't serve as a board role. I've mentioned before I serve on a technology steering committee for our engineering firm. We have a few thousand people in the firm, and there's a lot of emerging technologies, and a big piece of, I guess, maybe on any given week, I might be spending 10% of my time kind of on my own time, because of course, it's all stuff to do in your free time, exploring technologies and things like that. And some of the big stuff that's kind of come up, and I'm pretty familiar with the mapping and the GIS and drone usages and applications for things like infrared and LiDAR information collecting. And again, just not a board, but a committee and somewhere I kind of have some expertise.
Great, great. And Kyle, did you want to answer that?
Yes, currently I'm only on one board, Hearthfire International. It's a group, a nonprofit that's focused on cultural preservation of Native American ceremonies and Native American cultural ways of life. We focus a lot on water protections and just preservation of cultural heritage in multiple Native American communities. Other than that, like I said, I've had 16 years of coaching in soccer and wrestling and youth sports, which have a lot of organization and board, quote unquote, activity that goes on with that. Currently, like I said, the only board I'm on is the one. I've got plenty of energy and plenty of time to offer to our community. And I come as a parent, a business owner, ready to serve the community with no attachments or connections to anything.
Great. Okay, thank you. If it looks like I'm not paying attention to you and I'm looking at something else and typing, it's only because I can't figure out what the last question should be because there are so many that are good. So I'm going to choose one that I don't understand in the hopes that you guys do. It sounds important. Okay, related to federal right-of-way, please comment on the upcoming and extremely important expansion of the rights-of-way from 20 to 130 feet on federal grounds. Anybody like to take that one?
Read that one again.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. It's not just me. Let's go. Please, okay, related to federal right-of-way, please comment on the upcoming and extremely important expansion of the rights-of-way from 20 to 130 feet on federal ground. If that's
I can
not
take it.
Yeah.
I can take I can take a stab at this one.
Great.
You know, currently our right.
Oh, wait, sorry, Alex. Tom had just started. So we're gonna...
go ahead, Tom.
You're on, Tom.
Okay. Yeah, these little squares, it's hard to follow.
I know.
The right-of-way is a very large issue for Trinity PUD. We moved into this as a result of a unfunded mandate from the state of California, which required us to develop a wildfire mitigation plan. As a result of the Camp Fire and the Carr Fire, the state directed any utility that has power lines running through at-risk wildfire risk conditions to develop this wildfire mitigation plan. And part of the implementation of that plan is to better secure those right-of-ways to reduce the risk of contacts from trees onto the power lines, thus creating a wildfire risk. As I said earlier, we're trying to mitigate that through a number of different ways. One is to take out more danger trees, but the second best way is to actually widen the right-of-way so those trees aren't as close to the power lines. Because it goes through federal property, it has to be done under the NEPA, National Environmental Protection Act. And NEPA is very specific about the information that needs to be gathered. So this past summer, we've hired, the PUD has hired a consulting group to gather botanical, biological, archaeological, cultural, water resource information to determine what is at risk within that 130-foot right-of-way, to identify, to flag it, to protect those areas that need to be protected. So that's the initial step. The next step will be producing a NEPA document that's available for the public to review. And then the public will get a chance to look at different alternatives and let the PUD know which alternative they feel is the best way to not only have a successful right-of-way clearance, but also protect the resources involved.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Would anybody else like to take a crack at that one? Is that a yes?
I will.
Okay.
So Tom's spot on that. And this has been a project that's taken a lot of work. One of the side things, not side things, but a pretty important thing for board members to do is to travel to Sacramento and to travel to Washington, D.C. I know personally I go back at least twice a year. We are very fortunate that Trinity is welcomed in Washington, D.C. We get meetings with the Undersecretary and the Secretary of Agriculture over the years. We can meet with Reclamation. And this right-of-way project is a culmination of a lot of talking in Washington, D.C. to the secretaries and bringing it back to the local offices and getting buy-in and being able to jump the entire United States, and for Trinity to have a connection in Washington, D.C., and then we can bring that back again is one of the reasons why this project is going so smoothly. And we've sat in a lot of meetings in Washington, D.C. with Feinstein's staff, LaMalfa staff, and a lot of people trying to get support for this. And this is pretty exciting that this is actually happening, and we're pretty proud of it.
Okay. Hi, Anna. What would you like to say?
Yeah, so I completely agree that we need a very timely and affordable, project, right away project. One thing as we're getting into this though, we need to look at are the estimates of how much timberland we'd be taking down for how much lines we're looking at protecting, right? So if we have about 400 miles of line, about 12 acres of forest per mile, we're looking at about 4,800 acres of forest clearing to do this. Now, I'm not saying that that's out of the question, but we need to really focus in on how important the NEPA document, other environmental documents are going to be to make sure that we are not significantly impacting the environment with this. There's maybe a middle ground in between that 130 feet where we can find maybe some less impact. But the environmental documents that are going to go into this need to be secure, they need to be adequate, and they need to be vetted by not only the public, also everybody needs to participate in this to make sure that amount of clearing is going to not severely and potentially significantly impact us on the environmental end.
Okay, great. I know I said that was the last question. I'm going to now do a little bit of Toastmasters exercise because I can't get enough of you guys. If you could possibly summarize in 1 minute, yes, this is a complete Toastmasters exercise, the top 3 things that you will hope to accomplish if elected. So it's 4 years from now, you're looking back and you're telling somebody on the elevator, you did these 3 things. What would they be? How would you describe that? And I'll pause and see who dares to go first.
I'll go first.
Okay.
Let's roll right into it.
Yeah.
So looking back in 4 years to see what 3 things I'd like to accomplish. First, keeping our rates low for everybody in the county. Second would be economic development so that we can, third, bring in some affordable and alternative sources of power so that we're looking at benefiting the entire district with the low rates, benefiting the entire district with more jobs, and benefiting the entire district with some alternative sources that we can also rely on in cases of emergency or even lessening the impact that we currently have.
Okay, thank you. Who wants to go next? Tom.
Yeah, I believe that if over the next 4 years, if we have seen obstacles and have been able to find the opportunities involved to overcome those obstacles, I think we'll be successful. I think the second thing that we will accomplish is to increase our customer base. I think adding additional high impact load customer base, especially over in Hayfork, just makes a lot of sense. And they use electricity, so let's provide it in a safe manner. And I think we're going to do that. The third, by using either giving the clients an opportunity to either go underground or to go overhead, but with additional safe clearance to those lines. We do those 3 things, we're going to be very successful.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Kelly, you looked raring to go.
Being a very fiscal person, one of my top priorities is making sure we have reserves and we have a revenue structure that allows the Trinity PUD to last for 40 more years. One of the big things we touched a little bit on it is getting the benefit of Trinity Power to other parts of the county. We can't annex the county. We can't take over PG&E lines. But there is a thing called wielding, and with cooperation with the Board of Supervisors, we can set up a community aggregate, and it allows Trinity Power to be wheeled to the people in southern Trinity County so they can get a reduced rate in their power costs over PG&E lines. It's probably near to impossible to buy PG&E lines these days, so we'll have to be creative of how we get Trinity Power to other people in the county. And then lastly, just hardening our infrastructure more so that we reduce risk by wildfires and other things that cause harm to it. So those are the top 3.
Thank you, sounds great. Alex, Kyle, or Andy, who would like to go?
I'll go.
Okay, Kyle.
I'm going to be echoing a lot of what's already been said, but I would say the main thing in 4 years, if I was looking back, I'd want to increase our fire safety and our infrastructure so that we're secure going into the future. I've got kids here, grandkids, going on into future generations. I want to see that we've got good fire protection and secure lines. I want to see diversification so that we're not having all our eggs in one basket with the dam, and we can see things moving in a direction. It doesn't all have to happen at once. I'd like to see a diversification into alternative sources of power and storage. And then also just keeping up with emerging technology, being ready to move with a technological field that is advancing faster than we can even think about. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. Andy.
All right. I guess number one would probably be a long-term plan for the sustainability of the district. Again, all of our eggs being in one basket. If something in 20 or 30 years from now, how long do we anticipate the Bureau of Reclamation's operating a successful dam, or could something happen? Not to put fear into anybody, but again, solar power is getting cheaper, and despite what we hear, it is effective in areas in our county. So that'd be one. Two, definitely wildfire safety. I don't have to go too far in depth. You know, putting critical lines underground being a very important piece of that, as well as the right-of-way expansion. And then expanding the district to get more equitable power rates to those folks who are in PG&E, much like Kelly said. And then also there are areas that are just not served right now. We talked about in southern Trinity, for example, Post Mountain. That area could see some environmental issues resolved with public utilities, not just electricity. There's some things going on there that really weren't planned well, and hopefully we can have a long-term plan to make that a better community as well.
Great, thank you. And Alex, I'm sure Julie wants you to just get off the phone already and tuck her in. So
she is ready for a book. But I think if I can look back in 4 years and see what I've helped accomplish at the PUD, obviously maintaining fair and affordable rates, working on developing forest health projects that will increase and maintain our water source, as well as increase and maintain our reliability and our fire safety, not just for our power lines, but for our communities, because that goes both ways. I think that our power lines can be used as fuel breaks, as well as trying to maintain the infrastructure that's already there. Looking for new business opportunities, whether it's through electric cars or whatever anybody wants to come in, we need to maintain an open mind for that, and getting as much power to as many customers as needed. So
that's great.
My goals.
You guys did a great job at Toastmasters, so congratulations. I will end it now. I won't ask any more questions, but we didn't get to every question. So what I would love is everybody, all the participants, you have my email. I've been emailing you. So if you don't mind, maybe you can let me know how I should let everyone know. We could put it on our Facebook page, how people can contact you directly with more questions, if you're open to that. I'll just wait a couple of days and then I'll publish something to participants as well as to our Facebook page. But I really want to thank everybody. It seems like hours ago that people were talking about measures, but this was all the same meeting, and it's been enlightening for me. And as I mentioned early on, the Hayfork Chamber, we have our own Get Out the Vote effort. Anything you can do, commit to 1 or 2 people or more to get them to the polls. And
thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Thank you. Have a good night. Thanks for everybody.
See you, everyone.
Good night.
Thanks, Julia.